Hmm. So I'm doing an audio test right now
Okay.
as we're chatting about music. I bought some comic books today.
Did you? What did you get?
I got an email from this comic book store where they kind of they keep an eye out for stuff if you're looking for something specific, and then when
Okay.
it comes in, they let you know. So for the longest time, I've been trying to collect Orion, the Walt Simonson run, and I'm missing. I think I'm missing like 10 issues, but the problem is that it's like a 25 issue run or something, and it becomes like the print run is like just like smaller and smaller because it wasn't very successful. So by the end of it, there was like very few that were printed, so they're pretty hard to find.
Yeah, I was with that book from the very beginning, and I was talking to Walt in email quite a lot back then, and I will tell you that I think they thought that, I don't know if you remember how successful his Thor run was in the 80s, but I think
Yeah.
that,
Well, I mean,
yeah,
I wasn't reading comics at the time, but I've heard of it after, and I've read it. I've read some of it actually.
well, I think what they thought was going to happen was because Orion started up when I think it was called Jack Kirby's Fourth World, which was a John Byrne title. And then Simonson, I think, had done some backup stories in that, and then so they canceled or Byrne quit. I don't know what happened there, but the Fourth World title. And then I think they thought that Orion, because it was basically the same creative team from Thor. You had Simonson writing and drawing it, and you had John Workman doing the lettering. I think DC thought that it was going to be as big as Thor.
Mm-hmm.
And what turned out is that nobody cared about Orion.
Yeah.
And, I mean, it was a great book, and it was a great run, and I can understand why you'd want to get the whole thing. And I can tell you right now, Walt Simonson, he was very frustrated at the lack of response to the book, but you're absolutely right that the print run towards the end, I mean, it wasn't print on demand, but I'm sure it was pretty close to the bone in terms of being, that they were not printing extra copies to be sitting around in the comic shop. They basically, whoever wanted them back then got them, and that was it. So you're going to
Yeah.
probably have to wait for people to die to complete a collection, or to lose interest in it.
Yeah. Well, I let me check. Let me check how many I have right now because I think I'm really close to completing my run, but not quite. And of course, now there's a collection that's coming out. They're reprinting it.
Yeah. Have you
Like
tried
it-
eBay and all that stuff?
No.
eBay's pretty good for back issues in terms of, usually if you look for a few weeks, sooner or later everything pops up.
Yeah. I don't know why I don't really buy stuff on eBay. I mean, it's always more annoying in Canada because you have to like
Oh, yeah.
deal with like borders and shit. But
I don't believe in borders. I think they're, just such a... I think that was the John Lennon line, wasn't it? Don't believe in borders, don't believe in something.
maybe.
Ketchup, don't believe in ketchup.
So today I got issue 23, 24, 20, and 11. So that means I'm only missing 3 issues, which
Wow.
is 12, 19, and 25.
Now, what do you find, what draws you to the book?
The art.
Okay.
But I mean, I'm also a big fan of Kirby's Fourth World characters, so, that's a plus.
Yep.
I actually haven't really read any of it. I think I might have read like the first 2 or 3 issues or something, but because I don't have the complete run, I've just been kind of like looking at them and
So
kind of
you're
enjoying
waiting.
them.
So you're waiting to get them all before you just do a whole read them
Yeah,
all in one shot. Yeah, that's a good way to do it.
yeah. Although
Now-
I don't know, sometimes I wish I could just be like, I could just like read it and then like skip the missing issue and just keep going and be like, yeah, whatever.
I mean, when I first started collecting comics, seriously as a hobby, probably when I was like 13 or 14, you didn't have much choice because there were so few reprints of anything, and there was no internet, there was no downloading anything for sure, there were no trade paperbacks. unless you wanted to wait for years and years and years to find them at a convention or a yard sale or something, you pretty much had to, fill in the blanks in your head until you could find those issues.
Yeah, I feel like that was probably a better way of doing it.
It seemed more organic and natural somehow, I guess. There's a real, and we've talked about this in email and stuff, that, I think nostalgia is one of the most toxic things about comics fandom. And I think it really holds it back to a large degree. But at the same time, maybe it's like the necessary impurity, like, the color yellow, not, Green Lantern's ring not working against the color yellow or whatever. Because if you were to excise from the comic book marketplace every single person who's in it specifically and primarily for nostalgia, the market would probably just disappear tomorrow. Mm-hmm. I don't know what you'd do without those people.
Yeah.
Even the most successful comic shops in terms of specializing in graphic novels, I mean, most of them still do, they still have a large focus on back issues. There aren't many that have just turned into sort of borders, and all they have is the trade paperbacks and the hardcovers, and back issues are, not a factor.
Yeah.
I was really shocked when we were visiting comic shops here in upstate New York a few months ago, and we'd go into a shop and you went right for the back issues. I kind of had forgotten that there were people that still had want lists and would go from shop to shop and look for back issues. And I don't mean that disparagingly at all. I was just I guess I don't really have those people in my life anymore. It's weird.
Yeah. I don't think there's, well, no, I'm sure there's still tons of people, but yeah, I don't know. I guess it's easy now to sort of like, there's so many stuff that's available in print, just in terms of like collected editions and things, and the rest of it is pretty much all available online. So it's like, if you really want to read something, unless you're some kind of crazy person who really needs to have it in single issues, like there's no reason to sort of like hunt them down like that. And the worst part is that often, like, it's almost like that should be the cheap option, like, finding them in dollar bins or whatever, but like it's often more economical to just buy the trade paperback than it is to buy a whole bunch of back issues.
Yeah, I think the comic shop owners have not quite embraced the idea that the back issues are more of an aggravation than anything to a lot of people.
Yeah.
And, listen, I've got 6 short boxes of single issues still that I kind of give the stink eye to and wish I could figure out some way to not have to have them. But there's stuff in those boxes that mean a lot to me, and it's the only way to have them because they're not in any trades, and I don't just want to have them digitally or something like that. Mm-hmm. But you're right. It's a weird thing. It does seem like that should be the economy way to go, but I think that you've got a bunch of 60-year-old comic shop owners that are still thinking about, I mean, to me it's amazing that there's even still an Overstreet price guide. When you can just go on eBay and look and see what the average sale price, of a back issue is, you can see what it's actually going for in real time. How a yearly price guide still has any relevance at all in this world, that blows my mind.
Yeah. I don't know. I don't know if people actually use it, like comic book stores. The older dealers do. I've seen them do it. Yeah, that's a bit ridiculous. I mean, sometimes it is like, sometimes you can find good deals. Like this place I was talking about, it's called Comic Hunter, and it's probably the biggest collection of back issues in Montreal that I've seen. But they have an entire room that is the dollar bin, basically. So it's I don't know, maybe like, I want to say like 40 long boxes, maybe more. I don't know. Like it's pretty full. And those are a dollar each. But every once in a while they have a sale where it's like 4 for $1. So if you want, you can like go and like just stock up on like, a bunch of comics for like $0.25 each.
Now, are they organized, or is it just randomly thrown into the boxes?
They're organized. Yeah, they're organized. I think it's just alphabetical by title. Yeah.
Now, let me ask you something, because this is one of the reasons why I don't like back issues. Mm-hmm. And I obviously I have some, but the in general, I don't like them because, especially for some reason, it seems you pick up a back issue from like 1967, and you'll open it up and the blacks are still black. I mean, there might be a little fading, but the colors are still vibrant. I noticed especially the books from the 70s and the 80s when it was still just newsprint. The 70s and the 80s books, it seems like everything is fading away much faster than the older comics, like from the 50s and 60s. Have you ever noticed that?
I don't think I have any comics from this 50s and 60s.
Okay.
I think like the oldest ones I have are from the 70s. So it's a bit hard for me to compare.
Yeah, like I can't enjoy looking at like a Marvel or a DC comic from like 1978 or 79 because it just looks like everything is fading away. Whereas, and I don't have that many books from the 60s. I probably got, maybe 15 or 20. But I open those up and I look at them, and yeah, the paper's aging a little bit, but I don't know. For some reason, I don't know if they were using better ink back then or what it is. It just seems like they hold up better. That's one of the reasons why I really like the Baxter paper books from the 80s. I don't know if you've ever seen any of those.
Yeah.
Those look like they were printed yesterday for the most part, unless they've been left out in the sun somewhere.
Mm-hmm.
I'm amazed at how well those have held up.
I'm looking at because in addition to the Orion books, I also bought a couple of issues of Machine Man.
Yep.
I'm looking at it now, and I don't know. I find this is actually pretty nice. I guess it's faded. It's hard to tell, like if it's just kind of how it was printed, or if it was more vibrant at the time. I don't really know.
And it varies from book to book. But if you look at the letters, the lettering and the word balloons, if they're still sharp and clear and readable, then you've got something that was printed decently, I guess. But I find a lot of those books, like it seems like the lettering is almost disintegrating before your eyes. Even it's weird.
I feel like probably it got shittier in the 80s, I think.
I think so,
than
yeah.
in the
70s. They introduced this Mando paper with the first issue of Crisis on Infinite Earths, which I think was late 86 or early 87. And that first issue was a catastrophe because it was printed badly. I don't know if you've ever seen the actual first issue of Crisis on Infinite Earths. It looks terrible, and it looked terrible the day it came out. It took them a while to figure out how to do the printing on this. It was called Mando paper, M-A-N-D-O, with a capital M. So I think it was a trademark name. But it was sort of a compromise between newsprint paper and Baxter paper. It was kind of about halfway in between. And other than that first issue of the Crisis, that represented a real upswing in the printing quality of the average newsstand, Marvel and DC comic. Those look pretty nice from then on. But I don't know how long that lasted. It seems to me in the early 90s or so, that's when they started printing everything on what appeared to be the cover stock. Every page was on slick paper.
Yeah.
And that, unfortunately, that intersected with the beginning of really bad Photoshop production techniques, where you'd have like those text pages, where the words were in yellow and the background was orange, and it was completely unreadable.
Yeah.
But they thought it looked great on the screen.
So the third comic I got today was it's a trade paperback. This comic, what's it published on? Oh, Image. Weird. I didn't even realize this was Image. It's by Jeff Lemire and Dustin Nguyen. I'm not very good at pronouncing those Vietnamese.
Nguyen, N-G-U-Y-E-N. Yeah. He was the one that drew some of Joe Casey's Wildcats 3.0, I think.
Yeah.
Yeah, he's pretty good.
Well, he does sometimes he does that like that watercolor thing, and and this is what this is. So I don't know if you.
What's the book?
Oh, it's called Descender.
Haven't heard of it.
So Jeff Lemire is writing, and Dustin is drawing. In it looks like full watercolor illustrations.
The only thing of Lemire's that I've read cover to cover was Essex County, which I thought was, it's not one of the 10 best graphic novels of all time, but it's got to be on the top 50, right? I mean, it's a great book.
Yeah, it's pretty good.
But he's one of those guys that, and I don't begrudge him making a living, but I kind of wonder, when he gets a whole bunch of work doing Superboy or whatever, you wonder what ended up not getting done so that he could get that regular paycheck,
I don't know. I feel like, because at DC he's mostly just writing. And
Okay.
I think he can, he probably doesn't spend a lot of time on these scripts. I think he's just kind of pumping it out, and I don't know. I don't know how seriously he takes it.
Well, do you remember when Dylan Horrocks was writing Batgirl?
No.
Yeah, I seem to recall that he had not very positive things to say, after that experience wrapped up, that he felt that it was a waste of time. But I don't know. I guess all these guys that come from independent comics and get hired by Marvel or DC, I guess they have to decide for themselves, is this what they want to do?
Mm-hmm.
It's unfortunate that we live in a world where the reality is, you can make great art like Essex County, or you can afford to pay your rent and buy groceries.
Yeah, well, I would... Sure. It would be nice if he could just kind of do that, but
Right.
I'd also like to believe that if there's a way that he can do both. This project, I don't know... I don't know if this project would have happened if it wasn't for his involvement at DC, because that's probably where he, the connection with Dustin Nguyen. How do you say it?
I think it's Nguyen.
Nguyen, yeah. They're both guys who work at DC, so
Right.
I don't know. Who knows? And it's interesting. This is the first time, to my knowledge, that he does a creator-owned independent work where he's not drawing it. Because before that, all his other stuff he was writing and drawing.
Mm-hmm.
And in this case, I get that at DC, his style is not really house style, so it doesn't really kind of make sense for him to be drawing Superboy or whatever. But I don't know. Anyway,
I don't know. I'd rather see a Superboy. If he's going to write Superboy, I'd rather see him draw it and see what happens.
Oh, me too. Yeah, for sure. I would have liked that. I thought his Superboy was all right, but not amazing or anything. But the thing is, I think he started writing it right before the whole New 52 thing, right? So we never really got to see where he was going with that anyway, because it was interrupted in the middle. And
So what else did you buy?
that's it. Those three things.
And that was today, you said?
Yeah, that was today. So I haven't read any of that yet.
So you're not a go to the comic shop on Wednesday kind of guy?
Not anymore, because I don't have anything on my pull list right now.
Okay. Yeah,
I kind of quit everything in one, because for a while, my to read list was just piling up. It was growing faster than I could. I was buying them faster than I could read them, basically. And I kept trying to cut down, and I could never bring it down enough to a level, because I would go to the store and then it'd be oh, check out this new series and blah blah blah, and you should read this, and I would just always end up coming out of there with a whole bunch of stuff. So I was okay, I'm just gonna quit everything, and I did.
When you were doing your comics blog, it seemed like you were reading everything being published.
Oh, I wasn't, but I was reading a lot. And for a while after that, I was even after when I stopped writing my blog, I was still buying a shit ton, a lot of image stuff. I bought so many crappy image things that I regret buying now. But
well, the dangerous thing about being a comics blogger, I think you'll probably agree with this, is that it's very easy to say to yourself, I have a moral obligation to keep up with what's going on, so of course I'm going to buy this big stack of comic books.
Yeah.
Even though I hate half of them, but I'm a journalist. I have to read them.
Yeah, exactly.
Well, my pull list at current is Gravedigger, which I think has one issue to go, the crime series by Christopher Mills and Rich Burchett, and Alan Moore and Jason Burrows' Providence. And that's only got 8 issues to go.
Yeah.
So the comics world has 8 months to come up with something else to get me to put on my pull list, or Other than that, for the first time, I think since I was about 15 years old, I won't have a pull list.
Yeah. I just added something today to my pull list, which is Island. Did you hear about the anthology that Brendan Graham is publishing?
I didn't, but I like him.
So it's him. Actually, it's not just him. It's him and Emma Rios.
Okay.
Do you know her? She's
I've heard the name.
She did that comic with Kelly Sue DeConnick.
Yep.
That weird Western thing. What was it called? Do you know what I'm talking about?
I don't.
Pretty Deadly or something like that.
That sounds vaguely familiar, yeah.
Anyway, so it's these two. They're kind of curating it, I guess, this anthology. It's kind of like a heavy metal sort of thing, or just whatever. It's an anthology comic. It's like $7 an issue, but they're like fairly thick, so you get a lot of good stuff, and it's all like the usual, like all the people who like. Did you ever read any of the Prophet?
Yeah, for a while. I probably read about 6 or 7 issues of that.
Of the relaunch.
Yeah.
Yeah. Did you like it?
It's funny you mention that because I was actually browsing online looking to see if I could find some of those at a place that I like to call the favored store. I want to say that I liked what I was looking at, but sort of like with you and Orion, I really don't know that I read it and understood necessarily what I was looking at so much as I was just sort of taking it all in.
Yeah.
It's interesting to me that you have, all of the original Image properties, in my opinion, were garbage, just from a storytelling narrative standpoint. And then you had creators come in later and actually do interesting things with them, whether it was Alan Moore with Wildcats or Graham with Prophet. I mean, if you look at those, Rob Liefeld, was it Stephen Platt, I think, was the artist on that originally. I mean, those were some terrible, terrible comics. And it's always amazing to me when somebody is able to take one of those properties, and actually do something really interesting with it. I think that's quite an achievement.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, I never read any of that Image stuff. I was not reading comics when it happened, and I think for someone to try to get into that like years later is pretty rough.
Yeah, they're pretty horrible. But the thing about Brandon Graham's Prophet, it probably reminded me more than anything else of Joe Casey and Tom Scioli's Godland, in that it was just so cosmic and so out there. And even if I didn't read it all the way through, it was comforting to know that there was somebody doing something that was that interesting,
Yeah, that's a weird comparison. I wouldn't have thought of that, but I think, I guess I kind of see what you mean, just in terms of.
I mean, they were both trippy. I think it would be fair to say, right?
Yeah, it's just because, for me, Prophet, the relaunch Prophet was much more along the lines of European stuff and like European science fiction, heavy metal kind of.
Sure, absolutely.
Stuff. That's what it reminded me of the most, and I really, really liked it. The first, I want to say the first 5 or 6 issues, where you kind of gradually kind of find out what is going on, in terms of the the idea that there's many different versions of John Prophet or whatever that have all been kind of awoken at the same time. Do you remember that, or is that what you read, or?
It was so long ago that I don't remember that, but it sounds right.
Yeah, I kind of want to tell you about it, but I don't know if I want to completely spoil it. Yeah, but I don't know. If you don't mind, I'm going to spoil it.
Sure,
a little bit. Because what I thought was really cool about it is that not really knowing what I was getting into. I started reading this thing and it's okay, this guy, it starts with this guy John Prophet wakes up on a planet, and he's picking he has to survive on this planet. He's got all this equipment or whatever, and it's got it's written in this really weird kind of style. but you follow him for like several issues, kind of like making his way on, you know, on his mission. And then at some point, you realize that there's another John Prophet that woke up on some other planet. And like, to me, that was really trippy. It's like, oh my God, like this guy that I've been following this whole time is not even the main character. He's just one of, you know, and it's only like, I don't know, like 3, 4 or 5 issues later that you meet the real John Prophet, like the one that was actually in the series that Rob Liefeld wrote.
Okay.
I thought that was really trippy, and it really kind of set up, you know, it was this really kind of interesting way to get into the story.
Now, were they all clones or something like that?
I guess so. Yeah. I mean, I don't really remember exactly the full story, but yeah. And the idea is like they're all kind of working for the Empire, the Earth Empire, or something like that. So which is evil. So they're all kind of like mind controlled by this thing, and the real John Prophet is trying to stop them. So he's
did the action that was Graham able to see it through to a conclusion? Did it actually come to a definitive end?
It did sort of, but there's more coming. So he like finished the run of Prophet, and then he took a break from it, and then I think like sometime in the next like couple of months there's another like mini series that's gonna be like the conclusion to it all that's coming
okay
out.
Because that's one of the biggest annoyances. I think there are so many great runs of comics that really never came to an end in the hands of, you know, whoever it was that made it a great run, you know.
Mm-hmm.
So, you know, if he does actually get to finish it in some way, shape, manner, or form, that'll be nice.
Yeah. And I mean, it was nicely collaborative too, you know, because he had like 4 or 5 people that he was working with all the time, and those guys would sort of like, you know, plot their own issues and kind of like do the, you know, like go off on sort of tangents, and like it seemed like everybody was really kind of contributing in an interesting way. So it was a nice project that he was kind of overseeing, but not necessarily.
Now, were each of
like
those
dictating.
different creators telling stories of the other John Prophets?
I think, like, kind of vaguely, that's how it was organized, sort of.
Because, I mean, I think creatively that would be a really good way to work around the fact that very few creators seem to be able to do a 30-page comic every month anymore, you know?
Yeah.
And that's really one of the things that both DC and Marvel, I think, and I think have tried to a certain extent, but I don't know how successful they've been, but they need to really address that. I mean, clearly, you know, we've come a long way from the world where Jack Kirby could draw, you know, 3.5 comics a month for years on end, and it wasn't a problem. John Byrne seemed to be able to do 2 or 3 titles a month for a while.
Yeah.
I don't know I really don't understand why it is that nobody seems capable of doing that anymore. But if you can come up with a story where it makes sense, that you have different stories that are sort of intertwined by different creators, but it all kind of comes together and has a common element to it like that. That's a good way to work around that.
Mm-hmm.
That's why I find it very hard to get excited when somebody says, you know, this great creative team that I really like is going to be doing this book. Like, a good example is this new Daredevil series that Ron Garney is going to be drawing. And I don't know, other than Captain America, I can't think of anything where Ron Garney has consistently drawn more than 3 or 4 issues in a row before somebody else came in and drew a few issues. And I used to like his artwork a lot. I haven't been very impressed by what I've seen of the previews of this Daredevil. He seems to have changed his style, but you know, it's just hard to get excited about any mainstream comic because you know that it's going to be 3 or 4 issues, and then somebody else is going to be doing it.
Yeah.
And maybe they'll come back, you know, like when Batman and Robin launched with Morrison and Quitely was gone after 3 issues. You know, that was really disappointing.
I guess so. I mean, I'm not, like, I'm more kind of forgiving of these kinds of things than I am with the way that DC usually handles it, where it's like, you know, they'll have like 3 pencilers on the same issue just because they're like trying to hit a deadline. Awesome. I mean, that to me is total garbage, and is really what turned me off of DC in a big way when I was like kind of like heavily invested in it. And
it's like trying to watch a movie when you know the characters are played by different actors 5 or 6 different times in 2 hours.
Yeah, because like the Grant Morrison Batman and Robin run like was kind of structured so that it would have like all of these like short like three issue kind of mini arcs, and they were each done by a different artist, so it kind of flowed fairly well, I thought, and they stuck to that rule, you know, enough that it wasn't like it just seemed kind of like almost like it was part of the gimmick in a way, whether it was intentional or not, I don't know. But yeah,
Right.
like I mean, too many, like I was burned like so many times on DC around the same time with like, you know, like just like, or even just like the whole arc would be one artist and then the last issue would be a fill-in. Like it's almost
there's I think there's 2 major issues that cause this, and I think that number one is the work ethic. Do the artists realize they have to work this many hours a day times this many days a month in order to meet their deadline?
I'm really, I mean, sure, but
but there's a bigger problem.
Yeah.
Which is, and I saw this back when Ladron was drawing the Inhumans for Marvel, which was, you know, 10 or 12 years ago. They had announced this book and started printing it before he was done drawing it, and it was a 4-issue miniseries, and the 4th issue was drawn by somebody else because he didn't have a chance to finish the whole thing. And I think that a lot of times, I think Marvel and DC jump the gun and they start releasing these books before it's realistic to think that the creative team is going to be able to get it all done.
Yeah, well, that's another thing. But like, what I was gonna say is that like I'd be really reluctant to like lay the blame on the artist a lot of the times, because I think what actually happens is that DC editorial will come in at the last minute and be like, oh, guess what, you have to like do this because we have a stupid crossover coming up and you have to wrap your story like, and you know the script is changing or whatever the hell is going on. I'm sure that
right
a lot of like that working environment can't be like all that easy to deal with, and
sure.
There's probably some
right.
crazy deadlines, you know, or if the scripts are late. I mean, I'm sure that happens too.
Yeah, I think that, you know, everybody was excited when Mike Wieringo and Peter David launched Friendly Neighborhood Spider-Man, which was, I don't know, 2002, 2003, somewhere around there. And then I think the second issue was the beginning of The Other crossover. I don't know if you ever read The Other. It was one of the worst Spider-Man crossover stories ever. And it completely derailed whatever it was that Peter David and Mike Wieringo had in mind for that title. You know, it ruins it.
Yeah. Well, I mean, I've never read that example. But that's like, in the short period of time that I was like reading a lot of DC, which was like from around the time of like Grant Morrison's Batman that we were just talking about, all the way up to like, I don't know, maybe like 3 months after the New 52. Like that's basically what every single series I was reading went through, except for the Grant Morrison stuff, which for some reason they would not touch. But like everything else was just like constantly like never really amounting to anything, because it was constantly being assaulted by a new crossover or line wide thing or other, and then the New 52 and whatever. So it was it was like 2 or 3 years of like just kind of like constantly being frustrated because like things would not be able to reach their full potential or their proper conclusion or whatever.
Well, I think that Jeff Johns and Grant Morrison were both safe in that period of time, because weren't they like sharing the creative they were in charge of the creative direction of the DC universe, right? So they could tell everybody else, we're screwing up your book, and you know, Batman now has a third leg and you know and a full beard, And but Green Lantern and whatever, whatever Morrison was doing and whatever Johns were doing, those books were, I mean, really those were the two characters, right? When the New 52 happened, where it almost really didn't even affect those characters, other than new number ones. But the Green Lantern story kind of continued unaffected from pre-New 52, right? I mean, I'm sure there were some nods to it, but for the most part, I think that the changes were cosmetic in those two cases.
Yeah, I guess so. But I mean, no, the Batman universe was affected a lot, actually. The whole history was changed.
Well, that's true. Yeah,
like Batgirl, like the whole like de-chairing of Barbara Gordon and all that. I mean, all of that affected the Bat universe a lot.
I guess I was thinking specifically of whatever Morrison. I think Morrison was still writing Batman and Robin at the time, wasn't he?
Yeah, and I think he was on to Batman Inc. or whatever.
Oh, that's right. Yeah, you're right. Maybe that's what I'm thinking of. Yeah, because didn't they relaunch that? But it really was just a continuation of whatever they had been doing before.
Yeah.
And that wasn't a terrible book, Batman Incorporated. That was okay.
Yeah, it was all right. That was kind of when I by that point I was like, okay, this has been going on for a long time now. Like, when is it going to end? And you know what? Like, I think for me, like, I really, really liked it when Dick Grayson was Batman.
I did too.
And I would have been happy to have seen that go on for much longer. Even with, like, Bruce Wayne returning and him sort of, like, taking maybe, like, a different kind of, like, a role.
Well, sort of like a Batman Beyond kind of thing, where Terry McGinnis was in the suit and Bruce Wayne became the guy back in the cave. That would have been great. But now you understand the pain, maybe, of guys like me who, even though I was a little old at the time, I was all for it. When they killed off Barry Allen and they killed off Hal Jordan, it was so great that it was a success that Wally West and Kyle Rayner became the new Flash and Green Lantern. Mm-hmm. And to me, it's kind of a festering sore that Jeff Johns got away with coming in and resetting that after 10 or 15 years of very successfully moving that on to the next generation of those characters.
Yeah.
And for him to say, no, we got to go back and have it be these other schmucks that it was when I was a kid.
Yeah, it's too bad because, like, I feel like in a way, because I like legacy characters, and I think it's a good way to move forward with superhero narratives in a shared universe. And it's a good way to bring in diversity. It's a good, there's a lot of kind of interesting things about it. And there's the people who grow up with the new version, like, they don't really care that it's not the original. It's like, right, that's the one that they like. And in a way, like, DC was kind of proof that worked. And everything was fine until they decided to go back. Yeah, and if you're going to have an
interconnected universe that's 75, now and close to 80 years old, you can either have what Stan Lee called the illusion of change. He called it that back in the 70s, and it was very successful. But, I mean, at some point, everybody is aware that Batman is about to be 80 years old,
Yeah.
So why can't we move on from that?
Yeah. It's the same thing with Peter Parker, right? Like, I mean, I was pretty excited when they announced that
Miles Morales?
Yeah, Miles Morales, thank you, was going to be, the official Spider-Man, and after that whole thing with the Ultimate line kind of collapsing. But then it's like, but he's not, because there's also another title that stars Peter Parker as Spider-Man, so whatever. But when they announced it seemed like he was going to be the one. And I would have been totally fine with that. It's like, just find some other role for Peter Parker. Like, he's older. He's not a teenager anymore. You don't need him to be Spider-Man. He can be, like, whatever.
Listen, you're talking to the guy who would have been, and this would have been a perfect solution to that. I would have been perfectly happy to have Otto Octavius's brain in Peter Parker's body forever. I loved Superior Spider-Man, so why not have Miles Morales be the Amazing Spider-Man, and then you can have, Dr. Octopus as Peter Parker be something else. That'd be fine with me. As far as I know, that book sold pretty well, too. I don't know.
Yeah, I think it did okay.
Have you read that? It was a great book.
No, I never read it. I was...
See, you were what?
I don't know. I was kind of off of Spider-Man at the time.
Sure. Well, the great thing about it was, and, I was a pretty big critic of the whole anything post, well, I was really not happy even with the Straczynski run towards the end, because you had the really weird stuff where Peter Parker, was sticking his tongue down the throat of the 5-year-old but physically aged Gwen Stacy clone or whatever was going on back then. There was all kinds of weird stuff with Straczynski. There always is. It always gets weird and twisted. Not as twisted as with Johns, but the whole Brand New Day era, I really wasn't wild about. But somewhere in there, I realized that Dan Slott really writes a very, very good Spider-Man. He really gets that world. He understands the character in a way that we really haven't seen going back to before even the 90s Clone Saga,
Mm-hmm.
Because Spider-Man is a character that's been messed up so many times in the last 25 or 30 years that it's really criminal. But Superior Spider-Man, the really great thing about it, and I won't spoil it for you or for anybody, but if you come to it with just an open mind and just read the first issue, and let it kind of wash over you, you realize that it's a fun idea. It's not going to last forever. Peter Parker's coming back eventually, so there's no reason to get pissed off like a lot of the fanboys did. They always act like it's a permanent thing, which is amazing. It's like, how long have you been reading comics? 5 minutes? But by the time you get to the end of Superior Spider-Man, and he had Dr. Octopus as Spider-Man for almost 3 years, which was quite an accomplishment, you realize by the end of it that he had a plan for a complete story with a beginning, a middle, and end. He knew what he wanted to do, and what he wanted to do was a really fucking cool idea. Mm-hmm. Because what happens to Otto Octavius over the course of that almost 3 years, there's a genuine emotionally moving character arc. And by the end of it, when you realize that Otto Octavius can't be Spider-Man anymore, you actually feel sad about that. And to me, that's a real big accomplishment. That he can make you feel that. Like, oh shit, I was hoping Dr. Octopus would be Spider-Man forever. Holy shit, I can't believe I was hoping Dr. Octopus would be Spider-Man forever.
Yeah.
How are you smart enough to do that? So, I don't really even know what fandom at large thinks of Dan Slott. I really don't know, because I'm not really that engaged with it anymore. But I thought that book was a real accomplishment. I thought it was really, really well done, and it was a lot of fun. It's if you're looking for an interesting Spider-Man story, there's worse things that you could do than read those 31 or 32 issues, however long it lasted.
I think the consensus was that it was good. I mean, I don't know if everybody liked it. I'm sure there was some people who didn't, but it seemed like it was pretty well liked at the time.
Yeah, there was
just from the sources I follow, which is not necessarily representative of the whole.
The thing that I find missing from most superhero comics that come out of Marvel and DC is that the writers don't think through the implications of their ideas. So they have one decent idea, if you're lucky, and they don't think through, well, if this happened, then what? And this happened, then what? And some pretty big names don't really think about those implications. Guys like Mark Miller and Brian Michael Bendis. But because these guys are really good with a shocking plot development like Miller, or they're really good with dialogue like Bendis, it gets forgiven by the majority of the readers. Well, people think he's good at dialogue, right? He's good at really talkative characters who all sound like him. That's really what he's good at. But in the case of Superior Spider-Man, or even any other Slott Spider-Man arc, because I've read quite a few of them, you really get the feeling when you read these stories that he thought through, well, what would it mean if Otto Octavius, living in Peter Parker's body, took over Peter Parker's life? Mm-hmm. What would he want to do? For example, he had Peter Parker go to school and get a doctorate because he couldn't stand the fact that he wasn't a doctor anymore. But that's the arrogance of Otto Octavius, right? So the great thing is, now that Peter Parker is back, Peter Parker is Dr. Peter Parker because Otto got him that doctorate. And that's something that has continued on, even, and I'm sure will continue on even in the, when the book starts back up. But to sit there for 5 minutes and actually think about the implications. If I was Otto Octavius, what would I do when I found myself in Peter Parker's body, right? And to actually come up with some interesting things like that.
Yeah.
To me, and there were many other examples of that in Superior Spider-Man. And it was really fun when Amazing Spider-Man started back up and Peter Parker discovered all these things that Otto Octavius had done, because it suddenly made Dr. Octopus a real person to Peter Parker, because almost everything that Octavius did made Peter Parker's life better, not worse.
Yeah.
Because Otto wanted a better life. He wanted to have the superior existence, right? I mean, the whole hook of it was that he wanted to be a better Spider-Man, a better hero than Peter Parker. So he had a chip on his shoulder and something to prove, but in order to prove it, he had to be a good guy. Which is why the book isn't really about a villain. Mm-hmm. Superior Spider-Man is Otto Octavius trying to be a good guy as a fuck you to Peter Parker. I mean, come on, that's kind of cool. And I think the mistake that some people made, the people that didn't like it or didn't think it was a good idea, was that they thought it was going to be evil Dr. Octopus pretending to be good Peter Parker, when really it was Dr. Octopus making the determination, fuck you, I'll show you, I'll be a good guy, I'll be a better good guy than you ever were.
Mm-hmm. I'm always a sucker for that kind of stuff, like the sort of typically villainous characters genuinely trying to be good. Like, that's why I loved Kieran Gillen's Loki so much, because
sure.
that was kind of the same thing that he was doing with it, or whatever the run was called, Journey into Mystery.
And that's the problem that I have with a lot of guys like Miller or Bendis, is that it's enough that the bad guy is evil. Mm-hmm. And those guys never stop to think, or for the most part don't stop to think, or don't write a story as if they realize. Hitler did not sit around thinking to himself, I'm evil, I'm doing all these terrible things, I'm such a bad guy. He was the worst human being in the history of the human race, and he thought he was doing a good thing.
Yeah.
And once in a while, you'll get a sophisticated writer, whether it's Alan Moore or even Mark Waid, if you ever read his book Empire, who writes the bad guy that way, that he's trying to do what he thinks is the right thing. And to me, and you realize that that's just two-dimensional instead of one-dimensional, but holy shit, most comics are so one-dimensional that it seems like you're in a whole other world.
Yeah.
I mean, that's all it takes for the comic to suddenly be sophisticated. That's why I can't watch The Flash. So many people that I know love this Flash TV show, and I tune into it, and the bad guy is sitting there telling the Flash, yes, I'm bad, I'm evil, I've been evilly manipulating your life for the whole season, and you didn't realize it, and I'm evil because I'm a prick. And that's all the thought that they've put into it.
Yeah. I think Lex Luthor is another example that, usually when he's written well, that's kind of how he is too, he genuinely thinks that he's doing something good for humanity.
Yeah. He's got to protect humanity from this evil alien.
Yeah.
Did you ever read Mark Miller's Superman Adventures run?
No.
That was a case where, and that was the one that was based on the animated series. He had a great handle on Luthor in that book. That Luthor was he was arrogant, and but he loved Metropolis, and he just felt so robbed of his rightful, being the smartest and most powerful guy in Metropolis, that he had this grudge against Superman. And that's the one book that I always will say, Miller did a great job with. Unfortunately, most of the rest of his career does not acquit him so well.
No. Did you ever read Paul Cornell's Action Comics when Lex Luthor was the star of that book?
No, I don't think so.
Oh, that was good. That was really good. Unfortunately, that's another example of something that was I think that run, it's 12 issues or something, would probably would have become a classic if it weren't for the fact that they ruined it with a crossover at the very end of it. So it's very unfortunate. But he had a story to tell, and I guess we'll never really know how it was originally supposed to end, but like all the way up to that point, it's pretty good. It also stars a really, really, really interesting take on Lois Lane, unlike anything I've ever seen.
Huh. I'll have to hunt those down.
Yeah.
It makes me sad to think that, you know, there was a time, and I mean, I know things in some ways are better now, but there was a time in the 60s and the 70s when you had some editors at Marvel and DC, guys like Archie Goodwin and Julius Schwartz, who I know, you know, it was not the greatest human being on earth, but these were guys who had enormous power over their editorial offices, right? And if the editor-in-chief came to them and said, we're doing this line-wide crossover, and, you know, Superman has to change his uniform for 3 months or whatever, somebody like Julius Schwartz had the power to go tell them to go fuck themselves. You're not doing that. We've got this all planned out already. We're not changing the story. This is what we're doing. And I don't think that anybody has, and I'm sure it's financial, but nobody seems to have the power to do that anymore, to say, you know, Paul Cornell is doing this great arc. It's all planned out. We've got a 12-issue story to tell. And if you want to do this other thing, you can do it afterwards or do it without us. But nobody seems to be able to do that anymore.
Well, the problem is it's all so short-sighted too, right? Because it's all about like having an immediate impact on sales. Because they might actually be like, I mean, who knows what's going on in those offices, but like I wouldn't be surprised if they were actually looking at the sales numbers and being like, okay, look, we have this crossover thing going on. Which book is not doing so well that we need like a bit of a sales boost? And it's like, oh, Paul Cornell's whatever, you know, like it could be selling more issues. It's Action Comics. It should be higher than it is. So then they decide to stick this stupid Doomsday crossover in it. But I mean, what they don't realize, I guess, or don't care maybe, is that really hurts kind of the long-term plan of it, because like otherwise, like, you know, you could have like a really good like trade paperback / graphic novel type of thing that you can sell in bookstores, and that's going to make sense as a work that kind of stands alone, that has a complete story, and that you might be able to sell for like years if it's, you know, if it finds an audience that way. So
yeah, how annoying is it when you go back and you read Grant Morrison's JLA and suddenly the Electric Superman shows up?
Yeah, well, it's annoying from the very beginning because it starts with mullet.
The long-haired Superman.
Yeah, the long-haired Superman, which is pretty terrible, and then it turns into, yeah.
But, you know, it does. It really, it compromises the integrity of the long-term viability of these works as being evergreen, you know, sellers. And, you know, there are some books where I guess it really isn't a factor. I mean, I think that as long as people remember who Alan Moore is, I think that there'll be an interest in his Swamp Thing. And it doesn't seem to hurt the sales of those trade paperbacks or the hardcovers that there was 2 or 3 issues where the skies were red because it was during the Crisis on Infinite Earths, you know. But there's a big difference between that and changing the character's look, or, you know, or even in the Flash. And I think that was around the same time as Morrison's JLA. There was a good 6 months or a year where the Flash was somebody else besides Wally West. Do you remember that?
Oh, I never read that. I didn't read a lot of the Flash.
Yeah, it was a Flash from the future. I think his name was John Fox. I think Wade was still writing the Flash at the time, and he had all these different, you know, the Speed Force and all these different Flashes from different eras. And there was a point in that JLA run where his costume was slightly different, like it was a darker shade of red, and nobody really knew who he was. I seem to recall, you know, like you'd see Kyle Rayner wondering to himself, you know, why is he acting this way? He doesn't seem to be, you know, the same old Flash that he used to be, you know? Mm-hmm. But yeah, anytime I go back and look at those JLA books and you see that fucking Electric Superman, god damn it. It's just like, you know, you got Grant Morrison on this book. Why can't you just leave it alone? Because that really, and I don't know how long that run lasted. I think it was something like 38 or 40 issues. And he had a plan for that whole thing, sort of like he did with New X-Men. You know, if you've got a really good writer who comes in and says, I can plot this book for 3 or 4 years worth of issues with a definitive beginning, middle, and end, and we're going to have all this foreshadowing and hints of what's to come and mysteries and red herrings, why not just leave him alone and let him do it?
Yeah. Well, that's a good question. We've been talking for an hour. Are we turning this into a podcast?
If you want to.